Today we're looking at the 10 best gun builds at level 2 traders in Tarkov's 1.0 patch, and we're going to do this very slightly differently and split it into CQB, medium range and long range because I think that is slightly more useful in this particular circumstance. A general comment about the entire wipe so far is that level 4 armor is much more prevalent than usual in the first week, and this is partly because of drops and also because of spawn rate chances going up at various new camps, places like Interchange, where you can get level 4 armor really easily. And so often the best way to progress is to find bullets in raid and use those that are kind of 37 pen or higher. However, that's not a luxury that everybody has, so we're going to look at the ammo that pairs well with the different traders, and we'll mention some in-raid bullets as it's appropriate as we go through the video. So let's start with CQB and go right from the budget end. I think one of the best guns, if we go to level 2 Prepor, is the Kedda B, which has been a budget staple for a really long time and is quite good simply because the recoil is so low. 42 recoil in this thing, and you get an integrated suppressor, all for 36,000 rubles, is really quite useful. Now, normally a weapon like this has crappy ammo, but on Prepor 2, if you go over to the bullets, there are two, and you do have to be a little bit careful. PBM is the one that you want, and this is the one that can go into the Kedda. It only has 40 damage, so it's not high, but 28 pen is honestly one of the better bullets that you can get on level 2 traders. The trick here is not to get baited into using PSTM. While this is only 24 pen, so a bit worse on that, it has much more damage, but if you read down here, this thing can only be used in the Clin, so it won't go in the Kedda, it won't go in the Kedda B. So for that one, you have to use the PBM cartridge. Now with 28 pen, this isn't going to be going through class 4 particularly easily, but because of the recoil and the handling on the Kedda, and actually the nice iron sights as well, this makes for a really good option if you just want to tap people's heads. It also has a pretty fast fire rate as well, and so you can use some of the flesh damage rounds to go for legs too if people are really kitted up with like face shields and things, because of the 900 RPM means that it is actually possible with a 30 rounder. At level 2 traders, you get the ability to buy more 30 rounders for 3k, so overall this is a really cheap package and you get a pretty decent gun for it. Sticking with CQB, the next one I want to point out is on Peacekeeper 2. Now, Peacekeeper's become a bit problematic because the monetary spend is actually really quite high for him now. As you can see, I'm at level 3 and to get to level 4, it needs to be 55k. Given that we need to get a lot of dollars anyway, it kind of coincides with doing the Tor story mission because you need to get 20k at some point so that you can go to Lighthouse. Now, one thing for Peacekeeper that I would point out just before we look at his weapon is that this dollar rate of 198 is really not very good. You should be avoiding trying to buy dollars from Peacekeeper at all possible if you can, because if you sell actual things to him, like real weapons or whatever, let's have a look at the Marlin, which we'll look at a bit later. This is $160 to Peacekeeper, for example, but it's only 24,000 rubles to Mechanic. So you're much better off selling items to Peacekeeper rather than selling items for rubles and then buying dollars off Peacekeeper. So try to focus on doing that if you can. So at level 2 traders, the ammo that he has isn't very good outside of the SMGs, and the one that is actually pretty good for is the UMP, which has come back in the level 2 traders guide after appearing in the level 1 traders guide because it's got an ammo to match in each trader level. The first time we used laser match, which was pretty good for where it was in the progression, and now we also have 45 ACP match FMJ, which has 72 damage and 25 penetration. Interestingly, this is lower pen than the ammo that we're going to be using for the Kedda B, as we saw before on Prepor, but the 72 damage really can't be sniffed at. That's super high for an SMG, and although you only get a fire rate of 600 RPM, this can give people some serious problems. As I said last time, it blacks a leg or an arm on the very first shot, which really gives people pause for thought, and I think a lot of people are out of the practice of pre-paining, so if you shoot somebody in the leg while they're moving, a lot of the time they're not going to have painkillers on, especially early on in the wipe, unless you're kind of experienced. The UMP is still great because it's super easy to mod. It's got the rails underneath, so you can attach a foregrip if you want to. You also have the ability to buy this sound suppressor. You can buy it on the flea market for a bit cheaper than you can get off Peacekeeper as well, which is pretty nice. Do remember that the sound ranges on suppressors is now much longer than it used to be. Suppressors are kind of nerfed compared to how they were before. Outside of 100 meters, you would not hear anything, but now you can hear them all the way up to 260 meters. Go and check out this video. I'll link it up there if you want to go and see what changes have been made to the sound. That should be quite useful. But you can suppress the UMP without too much difficulty. 40k is a little bit expensive, but it's really easy to mod and a great weapon because of the high damage for an SMG. The final build that we have in the CQB section before we move on to the intermediate is over on Jaeger 2. On Jaeger 2, you unlock various shotguns. You can choose between the MP153, the Saiga 12, and the MP155 from the semi-auto shotties. Also the M3 Super, but it fires quite a lot slower than these other three, which is why I always recommend these guys. And the game changer over on Jaeger is in ammo. You now have access to 1270 Piranha. Piranha is one of my favorite cartridges for the shotgun because it means that you don't have to choose between leg metal or going for face shots and trying to avoid the helmet and getting lucky on the spray pattern. And this makes shotguns a bit more consistent because you can just go for center of mass, and oftentimes the darts will go through class 2 soft armor, and also helmets, it will destroy them as well. The thing about Piranha, rather than Flechette, which is its kind of bigger brother, is although it doesn't do as much penetration, it has 10 projectiles rather than 8, so it really does shred people, and the armor damage happens per projectile. So every single individual projectile is modeled, and they happen one at a time. So the armor gets degraded slowly until pellets start going through. And you're also going to be blacking arms and stomachs and things like that on the way. This causes people real issues. I've actually just finished setup myself. I kind of beeline through it, and I always quite enjoy setup. So I've finished that, and fighting against other people, it's surprising how often it is that you shoot somebody once and then they can't really fight you back because they've got blacked arms, they can't really move, maybe they're not pre-penned as well. It just causes them so many problems to be hit by a single shell of Piranha first, which usually means it's easier for you to take them out afterwards. For the 153 itself, I quite like modding it out like this. I have a particular mod called the Botherer. You don't get the 133 mag until Jaeger 3. So until then, I put on the 153 mag with 7 shells in it, but this makes it a lot better. It's probably the biggest upgrade that you need for the 153. Other than that, I just put a sprut on, stick on something around the outside, maybe a flashlight, maybe a laser, and then use the target ring on top because this is still a buckshot kind of spray. And I like the way that the target ring looks. It's like a ring. I'll put some footage up of me using it, and then just stick something like the GKO2. It doesn't really matter what you do there. Outside of this, everything else is kind of not really necessary. This is super cheap to build. If I was going to buy everything from scratch and ignoring the parts that we don't need, where people are trying to scalp people on the flea market, then the entire thing is 65k, and that's including having a flashlight and a laser at the same time, which is the way that I put it on mine, because the flashlight goes in a ring, and the last time I tested it, that doesn't give you the 0.5 bonus, whereas the laser does. So you could technically go without these things and make it even cheaper if you wanted to. The base cost of the weapon is under 50k, so this thing is really, really good for budget runs. So next I want to talk about the intermediate ranges, general run-of-the-mill type weapons, and this is where we come back to our find in raid. I talked about this last time in the level 1 trader builds, but I think with the prevalence of class 4 armor, you still really do want to be finding this stuff in raid if you can. You can see here that just the plentifulness of 545 ammo in raid makes it just an obvious choice to use something like a 545 AK. Even the baby AKs from Prapor 1 are still going to work, but you see here we've got anything from PS and up will be okay. This is 28 pen, that's kind of the starting point. PP has 34 pen, BT has got 37 pen, BP has got 45 pen, and then the Golnik is probably a little bit overkill to be honest with 62 pen, but that's quite good if you think you're going against geared players or maybe one of the bosses like Killer or Tagilla, because that will go through their face shields straight away. BS is also pretty good too with 54 pen and 45 damage, so these cartridges are just some of the best that you're going to find, and a lot of the time you can't even buy these things in the end game. So over on Prapor, we can stick them into any gun that we really like. Any of the AKs will work depending on what you want. Often I'm still using the baby AK that I used on the original level 1 traders build and modding this out. At this point in time, you can make it a little bit better because you can probably access the fleet and do a few other things. So you can use something like the B11 mount, like we did last time. These days you're going to be able to add on like the DTK1, and if you want to go completely all out, then you can go and add something like the PT1 from Skier on top of a pilgrim rail with some sight of your choice, whatever it might be that you're kind of liking the look of at the moment. I've been toying around with a few different sights. The Mi-Pro is honestly not bad, but these builds are pretty decent, although the recoil is a little high. If you want to be building it up a bit more than that, you could potentially pick something like a regular AK-74N. This allows you to put on one of these PT AKMs and then the PT1 from Skier again, and now we can choose lots of different handguards. You can probably buy one of these MOE AKMs from the flea market. Onto that, you just put an M-Lock rail and put something else. An RK4 is quite a good choice. This gives you the most recoil reduction that you have on any of the vertical foregrips from the traders, at -2, which is pretty good. We could use the DTK on this guy instead as well, which comes from Skier 2. And then as we need for the longer AKs, we use the Bastion instead, and we put a sight onto that. That's going to have slightly lower recoil than the 74U, but it's slightly more unwieldy inside. So if you're going to be going to dorms or something, I actually think the baby AK is probably slightly better. The other side to this found in raid bullets is the 7.62 version, which obviously you're also finding those as well. I don't tend to find quite as much good ammo in the 7.62. I have some. I have a little bit of BP, which is the 58 damage and 47 pen ammo. Also a bit of PP, which is 59 damage and 41 pen. But more often than not, you're going to find PS, which is 61 damage and 35 pen, and T45M, which is 65 damage and 30 pen. These are the two you're probably looking out for. And as I said, these aren't as good as the ones that you find for 545 most of the time. And this one, especially PS, will deal with people with class 4 armor on. So if you need to use an AKM or you want something with a bit more heft that does a bit more damage, then this can potentially be a choice. And over on Prapor, there's lots of different guns again to choose from. They all mod out in basically the same way. So you can pretty much copy the build from the AK-74N over on the AKM instead, which you can buy for 43k. Now, there are some choices over on Prapor if you don't have the good bullets for either of these two particular calibers, because without finding them on raid, the choices on the traders, frankly, is rubbish. One of the best ammos that Prapor has at level 2 is 9x39 SP5. This is 71 damage and 28 pen, and this fits into a weapon that also appears at Prep level 2, which is this, the VSK-94, which is only 54k, which again is kind of a bargain given that it comes integrally suppressed. This one is a little bit tricky to mod, it's a bit awkward, so you need to use the side rail. If you want to get a tactical device onto this thing, you normally have to use this mount, the Axiom Cobra Dovetail, because that has a special side rail that allows you to put on a laser or something on the side of the weapon, the cheapest being the blue, for example, and then you can put a sight of your choice on the top. The biggest downside with this guy is it only has 20 round magazines. It has a RPM of 700 though, so this can deal with people pretty well, and there's no ability to put a foregrip or anything. But this is a pretty good run and gun suppressed weapon if you want to use that. Do just be careful of the low muzzle velocity, it's only 246 meters per second, so if people are a little bit further away, you really have to lead them quite a lot more than you think, and the bullet drop can be quite a lot over relatively short distances as well. So be careful of that, but at point blank, the amount of damage that this gun does means that it really can shred people. The final intermediate build that I want to point out is over on Peacekeeper 2 again, and the reason for this is that we've actually had quite a lot of new weapons on Peacekeeper that people are very excited about, like the M16. The issue with the M16 though is that it is $715, which is really quite expensive. Given that you need a lot of dollars for things for Peacekeeper, either handing stuff in for Friend from the West, or to pay towards the actual quest line, $715 feels like a bit of a scam. But if you are desperate to use 5.56, you still have the ability to use the G36C, which is 1/3 less than the M16. You also probably have to do less to the G36 to make it feel good right out of the gate, because it's already got a rail for a foregrip. You can just put on whatever you want, maybe an RK4, or if you're just cheaping out, then you can go for the CAC vertical foregrip. And then outside of this, you're basically just sticking on whatever muzzle brake you've picked up or anything that you might find around in the raid. Using the flea market, you can put on something like the SF3P from Mechanic 2, and then something very basic. If you just do a link search over here, you can go and search for various muzzle brakes on the suppressors. And you could pick either the Surefire SOCOM RC2, or you could maybe get the Mini Monster using the VHS tape barter. Go and have a look at this, although it's really expensive right now. It's just one to bear in mind. I do like the Mini Monster, but early on it is quite hard to get access to. And the regular Monster is one that's usually cheap as well. This one's not cheap at the moment. I think that's partly because I did a gunsmith guide talking about using the Monster for the M4. This probably should go down in a few days. It's usually one of the ones that isn't as sought after. But either way you want to do it, again, you can just put a sight on top, anything that you have around or anything that you like in particular, and this gun is pretty much good to go. This is mainly for using M855 if you were USEC. However, there is one extra option for getting ammo, and that's over in the hideout. So if we go into the hideout, we can go into the workbench. At level 2, you get the ability to craft this ammo here, which is Mark 318 Motto SOST, which is 53 damage and 33 pen. So it's actually very slightly better than M80. It's not perfect, it's not up in the 37s like you might get for 5.601, but if you really want to run 5.56 and you get pretty decent fire rate with the G36C as well, then crafting this can be a choice because it only costs blue powders and greens as well. Okay, so finally onto long range. We are going to be looking at Skier, and the first one from Skier, the ever good barter, the RFB, can be made for gas analyzers. You need 2 of them. These things, outside of their actual usage for quests, they don't really sell for a great deal. So you can pick up the RFB for 32,000 rubles, which for a little DMR like this is pretty damn good. The only issue here is that the ammo isn't that amazing. TCW SP, which is the one that you can buy from Skier 2, is 85 damage, which is great, but 30 pen only, which means you'll have to shoot them quite a few times if they're wearing class 4 armor, which is a bit of a shame. There is a way to get BCP FMJ. It's over on Jaeger 3, which is a bit high for some people, I'm aware, but this is a lot better with 37 pen. And going back to the hideout, there's also another way to do this in Workbench 2. You can go and make this here as well, and this only costs kite gunpowder. So this is actually a pretty efficient craft to do if you want to use the RFB and you like using those long range kind of guns. The RFB itself obviously can take a scope and a vertical foregrip as well. Something that changed last wipe, actually, this is different since like a couple of wipes ago, but we've had it for a while, is the RFB 3-inch quad rail mount. This means that you can then attach lasers and stuff to the RFB that wasn't possible before, and this is really cheap on Skier 2. Like some of the other guns, you can attach suppressors to this as well, or just regular muzzle brakes if you want. The only unfortunate thing is that a lot of the actual brakes themselves aren't available until a bit later, so probably the easiest one is using the Hybrid 46, if you're not using it for gunsmith, which is why I'm kind of holding off, because I'm using these for gunsmith and you need RAM to be able to barter for these. I do believe BSG have just put in a change where you're able to buy barter items and things in the flea market for a lot less than you used to. So the 4 RAM barter, you can probably just go and pick up 4 sticks of RAM now for not that much money, and then you can use that to put the DT hybrid and the Hybrid 46 suppressor onto the RFB, which is honestly quite a good choice for this gun, because you can't make the recoil that low, but you can make the ergo a bit better by using something like the Hybrid 46. It's one of the better ergo weapons in general. On top of this, you can then use any of the relatively entry-level scopes. If you're struggling for something long range, then the Kipper Arms short sight mount adapter can take this thing, either one of the ACOGs or this, the Prism 2.5, The reason why I point this out is that you can get this on Skier 2 specifically. It's only 20k. It's one of the cheapest scopes you can get. Some people really don't like the reticle on it. It's sort of, you just got to try it. Some people love it, some people hate it. It's nice and big. It's one of the biggest ones on the screen, so it's quite good for getting sight picture, but sometimes the little red rings can sort of get in the way. Other than this, the RFB is a really good cheap rifle. You don't have to go suppressed if you don't want to, especially considering the suppressor nerfs recently. And without the suppressor, this loadout only costs about 60k. Okay, next up, we need to talk about the Marlin, which is available on Jaeger 2. I already did an entire video about this guy, 45,000 rubles, so I'll link that up there. We'll briefly go through it here. At stock, you can't really do anything with it because the mount is purchasable only on Mechanic 2. So if you have Mechanic 2, you can put the Rhino mount on and then you can add basically any optic that you like. The way that I've started using this is as a secondary to take it alongside a more full auto weapon, because the lever action, while it's not slow and is a lot faster than many of the other bolt actions, in a close combat situation your RPM is only around 100. It's really not very fast, and so you will just lose to semi-auto guns and definitely full auto weapons in CQB. I've been using cheap scopes like the Swamp Fox, like this guy here, the Swamp Fox Tri-Hawk, and this gives you a nice little bit of zoom magnification. I'm not making really many other adjustments to this gun at all. I'm just slapping on the rail and the scope and then using it to try and get shootable in heaven shots when an opportunity opens up. At 45k, it's also cheap enough to use, but I do think you need to be level 20 really to take advantage of this rail. The other issue is that you don't get the good ammo until level 20 now. They've already moved it away from Jaeger, so you used to be able to get 308 ME, regular one, on here too. At the moment, it's only 96 damage and 24 pen LOKT that you can get on Jaeger, whereas Mechanic 2 now has the better one, which is 308 ME. This is 80 damage and 42 pen, so this is like a guaranteed headshot through class 4 helmets as long as it doesn't ricochet, because the penetration is high enough. This is really what you want if you're going for those headshots for shootborn. But the lever action really does give you a lot more shots than it would do if you were using, say, a VPO-215 or any of the other bolties, an SV98, anything like that. Speaking of that gun, the 10th weapon in our series is on Jaeger, and the reason why I've put this in the level 2 traders, despite the fact that it is a level 1 gun, either the VPO-215 or the VPO-219, because these are both 366, is that you're probably not going to be level 2 traders by the time that you finish Tarkov Shooter Part 3. Now, if you do that, this is the one where you have to shoot PMCs less than 25 meters away. And once you do that, you get to craft APM. Now, they've actually made some changes to the APM craft. APM is an incredibly strong bullet. If we go to the workbench, I think this is now available on workbench level 1. I can't quite check because I have workbench level 2, but this just costs Hawk gunpowder and 7.62x39 PS ammo. So if you do want to have some of this, then you're going to want to save these things in raid rather than using them in the AKMs like we talked about before. And this gets you a bunch of APM, which is really powerful, 90 damage and 42 penetration. In the VPO-215, this is pretty deadly. In the 209, which is semi-automatic, it is really, really strong. And one of the reasons for this is one of the very few cartridges in the entire game that can penetrate and kill a player through level 3 armor in one shot. It actually won't kill a player through level 4 because of the damage mitigation. It'll almost certainly go through, but when it goes through, it'll only hit them for about 76. So a full health player won't die to a single shot of APM to the chest because it won't do 90 damage. It'll do 20% less than that roughly because class 4 armor takes away a lot of the damage. Whereas through class 3, there is no damage mitigation because 42 is just way too high and it'll hit them for 90 minus a bit of distance drop off. So it might hit them for 87 or 88, something like that, and they will die. This is one of the few cartridges that will do that. There's not many in the game that will. Big benefit for this is it one-tap scavs to the chest too, which is quite handy in general. And given this is quite a cheap craft now, obviously accessibility of 7.62 PS notwithstanding, this could be a good choice if you prefer using this over the Marlin. But there you have it. I hope that's given you a good range of ideas from close, mid, and long range for the various weapons in EFT in 1.0. As I said before, I think the best way is just to go around the various places where you might find ammo. Places like Attachment Shack, USEC Camp on Woods, the new areas on Interchange, because there's tons of ammo out there, and using that to guide what weapons you're going to use, because that really will send you in good stead if you're using ammo with 40 pen plus. But if you're looking for some other ideas, then I hope this has given you some food for thought. So as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.